Okay.
Who's this? Two lovely ladies.
Hey, how are you?
Good morning. Sorry. We didn't think it was working, so I was going to yell. Really? Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Crawford Memorial United Methodist Church, a reconciling congregation in Winchester, Mass. I know we have people hopefully on the live streams, so let's say hello to them. I'll count to 3, and then we can turn and wave. 1, 2, 3. Hello, live stream. Great, thank you. I have a lot of announcements this morning, and if I will let people, if I haven't mentioned everything, I will let you speak. But first, I wanted to, maybe people know already, this is actually turning out to be a Ladies' Sunday. The service is going to be led by lay people here because our Pastor Ann is home with COVID. Now she kind of towards the middle of the week, I think, tested positive. She sent me a text this morning. Those of us who knew have been in contact, and she said she's not feeling too badly this morning. It's kind of upper respiratory stuff. She's had a couple of really good nights of sleep, which has helped. She wanted me to pass on her gratitude and thanks for all those who have brought food for her. She did want to let people know that it would be best, if you wanted to reach out to her, it would be best to communicate with her via text or email as opposed to a phone call, because her throat is pretty sore. And she also said, and of course, prayers are welcome. And speaking of prayers, before I forget, it's been our practice to, during the Joys and Concerns, to have Mary Jane is going to, during the Anthem, walk up the middle aisle and collect these prayer cards. They're in the little slots in the pews. So if you have any joys or concerns that you want me to lift up later in the service, please make sure you fill those out. Okay, now, before I forget, I just wanted to also let people know we do have, Rosemary has once again made the beautiful posters, flyers for the fair, which is on Saturday, November 12th. So there's a pile of them on the table right here, so please take as many as you'd like to go out into your neighborhoods and communities and post them in places where people might see them. And I also wanted to, before the fair happens, on October 29th, we have a big Halloween extravaganza. That's it. Featuring Cindy Skinless and the Decomposers. And Ann has told us a lot about that. And she and her brother have been involved, especially her brother, for many, many years, and it should be a lot of fun. It's a family kind of event. The doors will open here at 4:30, and there will be the Cindy Skinless and the Decomposers concert at 7. And it's there'll be some food and activities and crafts for children, so it'll be a fun time. And then other things related to the fair, this was all in the messenger, but I just, there's going to be soup makers, we need soup makers, there's information in the messenger about that for the fair. This Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday, I think, is the pie making, and that's 5 to 7 here at Crawford, the apple pie making, because we'll be selling those again. There was all the information about the white elephant. Hold your horses, don't drop it off till later. And then also I just want to mention on October 24th, there's another opportunity to help out and serve at the dwelling place. Let me see. I think I've said all my announcements. Does anyone else have an announcement they'd like to make? No? Okay, so So seeing none, we will hear the intro by our chancel choir, Sing to the Lord.
Please rise as you are able. The call to worship is Psalm 25, verses 1 through 10. We will read it responsibly. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul.
O my God, in you I trust. Let me not be put to shame. Let not my enemies exalt over me.
Let none that wait for you be put to shame.
Let them be ashamed who are clothed with treachery.
Make me to know your ways, O Lord.
Teach me your paths.
Lead me in your truth and teach me.
For you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long.
Be mindful of your mercy, O Lord, and of your steadfast love, for they have been from of old.
Remember not the sins of my youth, or my transgressions. According to your steadfast love, remember, for the sake of your goodness, O Lord.
Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore the Lord instructs sinners in the way, and leads humble in what is right, and teach them their way.
All the paths of the Lord are steadfast love and faithfulness, for those who keep the Lord's covenant and testimonies.
And our opening hymn is Wonderful Words of Life in the red hymnal, page number 600. Take away, O Lord, the veil of my heart, while I read the Scriptures. Blessed art thou, O Lord. Teach me thy statutes.
probably a little bit terrified when you saw I was responsible for the sermon this morning. But fear not, I'm channeling my inner Ian and sharing with you her writings from her book about the Bible, about the Apocrypha. I used that word 10 times yesterday. Your study Bible probably had a map that shows that while the landmass of Israel was, and still is, small, its location on the east side of the Mediterranean has always been strategic. Given the surrounding deserts, anybody who wants to trade with the nations to the west needed the sea, and therefore to the land that Israel claimed for its own. So here come the invaders. In 722 BCE, Assyria moved in and took the north part of the country. Then in 586, Jerusalem was sacked by the Babylonian Empire. The temple was destroyed, and the people were taken into captivity. A good chunk of the Bible was written during this Babylonian captivity, or exile, as people reflected on what happened to them and tried to make sense of it all. 50 years later, under the leadership of Ezra and Nehemiah, both of whom have books in the Bible named after them, the Israelites were allowed to return and to rebuild. The scrolls that became the Hebrew Bible were finished and solidified by Ezra during this time. But Israel's location and strategic importance had not changed. As the power of Babylon faded, the power of Greece rose, and the power of Greek culture made itself felt far and wide. Alexander wasn't called the Great for nothing, and his conquests around 330 BCE ensured that both Greek culture and Greek language flourished wherever he went. Greek language and culture had a mixed reception with the Jewish population. It was a source of conflict between the Hellenizers, those adopting the Greek ways, and the more traditional Jews in both the Old and the New Testaments. Now, the religious leaders had a problem. People were less and less able to understand their own sacred texts, which were written primarily in Hebrew. This was especially true for Jews living outside of Israel, where the Greek language reigned supreme. To address this need, some 70 or so scholars began to work on a translation of the Hebrew Bible in Alexandria, Egypt, sometime during the 3rd century BCE, and they produced the Septuagint. The popularity and the scope of the Septuagint grew, however, and it included some books that were non-traditional, so that by 132 BCE it included some additional writings that were not in the collection brought together by Ezra. These extra books were newer Jewish writings from the Second Temple period, about 530 to 70. There will be a test at the end. All the dates. A 30-page paper was looking forward to. These interest to the Jews, but were not accepted as part of the canon of the Hebrew Bible. Because they were not in the Hebrew Bible, but only in the Septuagint, they became known as the hidden books. And in Greek, that translates to the Apocrypha. What to do with them? Christians had been using them as sacred texts from the beginning due to their inclusion in the Septuagint. Many early Christian communities disputed with the Jewish conclusion that these books were not to be considered part of the canon and continued to see and use the Apocrypha as part of Scripture. And why wouldn't they? They themselves were circulating new texts. They had letters from Peter and Paul, all sorts of stories about the life of Jesus, and their own early history that provided nourishment for their souls and guidance for their lives and their new truths. But there was a solution brewing. By about 70 CE, there was a new world superpower. You may have heard of it. It's called Rome. And its official language was Latin. Eventually, a Latin Bible translation was needed, and in the 4th and 5th century CE, a Christian priest named Jerome provided it. His translation was known as the Vulgate, from the Latin word for language of the people, and included New Testament texts as well. Jerome was later canonized for these efforts. Jerome did his Old Testament translation from the Hebrew Bible and not the Septuagint, so he had a decision to make. What to do with these extra books, known as the Apocrypha? Well, Jerome was wise. He took a middle ground. He did not believe they should be considered part of the Bible per se, but he did believe they were valuable. Other Christian leaders at the time thought they should be part of the Bible without reservation. So he compromised. He included them in the Vulgate, but he separated them out into their own section. And so the Apocrypha sat in the Bibles of the church for the next 1,000 years, accepted by many as divinely inspired and questioned by others. And then comes along those pesky Protestants. When the Protestant reformers came along in the 16th century, however, the debate over these books was reignited. Believing the Hebrew Bible to be closer to the original than the Septuagint, the Protestants joined the Jews in refusing the authority of these contested books. Martin Luther kept them completely out of his German translation, and eventually most Protestant translations took the Apocrypha out as well. Catholic and Orthodox churches, however, kept them in with a few small differences between the two traditions. And that is still the general rule. Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches refer to these books as deuterocanonical. There will be a test on all the language used in this one as well, which means second canon. The original 1611 version of the King James included the Apocrypha, although it's difficult to find a later version of the King James that has it. In the late 20th century, there came to be more interest in the Apocrypha, even in Protestant circles. After all, the Septuagint was in broad use among Jews in the first century. So both Jesus and Paul would have known these stories and perhaps considered them sacred. Now you can find some Protestant translations of the Apocrypha that include the Apocrypha, as Jerome included it in a separate section. The Apocrypha includes some great stories, and you're going to hear a couple of them from Laura in just a minute. And there are some additions in the books of Daniel and Esther, letters, prayers, and large swaths of history that give the reader a sense of what was happening in Israel during the 200 years just prior to Jesus' birth. They're definitely worth reading. Did God inspire them? You'll have to decide that for yourself.
Okay, so Anne had suggested that we read two of the stories in Daniel 14, which Anne was just explaining, are part of the Apocrypha. As she also mentioned, these are often in the Catholic Bibles and not some others. So this is from the New Revised Standard Version, Catholic edition of the Bible. So Daniel 14. The first story is about Daniel and the priests of Bel. When King Astyages was laid to rest with his ancestors, Cyrus the Persian succeeded to his kingdom. Daniel was a companion of the king and was the most honored of all his friends. Now the Babylonians had an idol called Bel, and every day they provided for it 12 bushels of choice flour and 40 sheep and 6 measures of wine. The king revered it and went every day to worship it, but Daniel worshipped his own God. So the king said to him, "Why do you not worship Bel?" He answered, "Because I do not revere idols made with hands, but the living God, who created heaven and earth and has dominion over all living creatures." The king said to him, "Do you not think that Bel is a living God? Do you not see how much he eats and drinks every day?" And Daniel laughed and said, "Do not be deceived, O king, for this thing is only clay inside and bronze outside, and it never ate or drank anything." Then the king was angry and called the priests of Bel and said to them, "If you do not tell me who is eating these provisions, you shall die. But if you prove that Bel is eating them, Daniel shall die, because he has spoken blasphemy against Bel." And Daniel said to the king, "Let it be done as you have said." Now there were 70 priests of Bel, besides their wives and children. So the king went with Daniel into the temple of Bel. The priests of Bel said, "See, we are now going outside. You yourself, O king, set out the food and prepare the wine, and shut the door and seal it with your signet. When you return in the morning, if you do not find that Bel has eaten it all, we will die. Otherwise, Daniel will, who is telling lies about us. They were unconcerned, for beneath the table they had made a hidden entrance through which they used to go in regularly and consume the provisions. After they had gone out, the king set out the food for Bel. Then Daniel ordered his servants to bring ashes, and they scattered them throughout the whole temple in the presence of the king alone. Then they went out, shut the door, and sealed it with the king's signet, and departed. During the night, the priests came as usual with their wives and children, and they ate and drank everything. Early in the morning, the king rose and came, and Daniel with him. The king said, "Are the seals unbroken, Daniel?" He answered, "They are unbroken, O king." As soon as the doors were opened, the king looked at the table and shouted in a loud voice, "You are great, O Bel, and in you there is no deceit at all." But Daniel laughed and restrained the king from going in. "Look at the floor," he said, "and notice whose footprints these are." The king said, "I see the footprints of men and women and children." Then the king was enraged, and he arrested the priests and their wives and children. They showed him the secret doors through which they used to enter to consume what was on the table. Therefore, the king put them to death and gave Bel over to Daniel, who destroyed it and its temple. The second story is about Daniel killing a dragon. Now in that place there was a great dragon, which the Babylonians revered. The king said to Daniel, "You cannot deny that this is a living God, so worship him." Daniel said, "I worship the Lord my God, for he is the living God. But give me permission, O king, and I will kill the dragon without sword or club." The king said, "I give you permission." Then Daniel took pitch, fat, and hair, and boiled them together, and made cakes, which he fed to the dragon. The dragon ate them and burst open. Then Daniel said, "See what you have been worshiping?" When the Babylonians heard about it, they were very indignant and conspired against the king, saying, "The king has become a Jew. He has destroyed Bel and killed the dragon and slaughtered the priests." Going to the king, they said, "Hand Daniel over to us, or else we will kill you and your household." The king saw that they were pressing him hard, and under compulsion, he handed Daniel over to them. And the only story that I think I knew from Daniel, Anne said we shouldn't read, but it's when in the lion's den. I think I learned that when I was a little kid. So now we are going to have our anthem, which is different than what's in the bulletin. It's going to be "I'm Gonna Live So God Can Use Me," performed by our chancel choir.
So God can use me anywhere, Lord.
come to a time of our, to lift up our joys and concerns, and Mary Jane's bringing them forward. Pisha Chen is our host on the live stream, and does she have, Stacy put on?
I just gave them to you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see.
Wait, those are from last week. Sorry.
Oh, that you wrote? Which one do you want? Live stream. Those are from last week?
Yeah.
This week, okay. Are there any from today? No. Okay. So the first one I see, I don't know who it's from, but so, what? Oh, sorry.
Celebration.
You want to sing? Celebrations, birthdays. And Janet.
My birthday tomorrow.
And Janet, we're organizing 76 trombone players to come to your house and play happy birthday for you. Hint, hint. Any other birthdays? None? Okay, so we're going to sing. Okay, now there's just a basic one, heartfelt gratitude for the many blessings in our lives. Yeah. Let me see if there's any. Are there any other celebrations to lift up other than birthdays? I will lift up, I think a lot of people know that last weekend I wasn't here because my daughter Megan got married. It was a beautiful weekend celebration in upstate New York, and then long weekend, and then Monday drove from New York to Rhode Island because it was Abraham's 7th birthday, so lots of family celebrations. 7 years. Seeing no other celebrations, would anyone like to lift up some concerns before I read what's on the card? Okay, just in case. So there's, please pray for John Stolfi and for Kevin for healing. Is that from you, Mary Jane? Yeah. Andrea, who has cancer for a second time, and Jason to help him with life. From Mary Jane. Any others? So I'm going to just, we'll have a moment of silent prayer, then I'm going to, where we can hold all of these blessings, our feelings of gratitude for celebrations and beautiful fall weather and friends and family and gathering in this beautiful sanctuary. And our concerns, people who are ill, stressors of life, continuing to deal with COVID and all of so many things that have been difficult to manage for the last few years. We'll hold those in silent prayer, and then I'm going to read from an author, John O'Donohue. I think Anne reads from him often too, from his book, To Bless the Space Between Us. It's called The Eyes of Jesus. I imagine the eyes of Jesus were harvest brown, the light of their grazing suffused with the seasons. the shadow of winter, the mind of spring, the blues of summer, and amber of harvest. A gaze that is perfect sister to the kindness that dwells in his beautiful hands. The eyes of Jesus gaze on us, stirring in the heart's clay the confidence of seasons that never lose their way to harvest. This gaze knows the signature of our heartbeat, the first glimmer from the dawn that dreamed our minds. The crevices where thoughts grow, long before the longing in the bone sends them toward the mind's eye. The artistry of the emptiness that knows to slow the hunger of outside things until they weave into the twilight side of the heart. A gaze full of all that is still future, looking out for us to glimpse the jeweled light in winter stone. Quickening the eyes that look at us, to see through to where words are blind, to say what we would love. Forever falling softly on our faces, his gaze plies the soul with light, laying down a luminous layer beneath our brief and brittle days, until the appointed dawn comes, assured and harvest death, to unravel the last black knot, and we are back home in the house that we have never left. Amen. And now will you join in me in the Lord's Prayer? Our Creator, Lord of heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our psalm benediction is in the bulletin. Let us now depart in our peace.
Shalom, my friends. May God's full mercies bless you, my friends, in all your living and through your loving. Christ be your shalom. Christ be your shalom. Amen.
Amen.